Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I have a short video of a family road trip we took in our 2021 Tesla Model Y long range all-wheel drive. We drove from Mount Airy, Maryland to Orlando, Florida, but the footage today was all taken on the return trip. At the end of the video, we will take a look at TeslaMate, which will also show us all the stats and details for our trip. Quick reminder, don't forget to click on thumbs up as it helps others find quality content on YouTube. Also, click on subscribe and then click the bell so you get notified anytime we add new content. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we're taking a look at the Model Y right before we departed Orlando. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you all the details of my consumption and charging and all that fun stuff. However, during the video, I also want to show you brief clips of what my consumption looked like on the Tesla Energy screen, mainly looking at the previous 30 miles. So this way you'll get an idea of those final consumption numbers and the consumption numbers as I was taking the trip. So here we can see what the consumption numbers looked like before I started my trip back. My family wanted to do some shopping before we started back, so I dropped them off to do some shopping, and then while they were shopping, I decided to fully charge the vehicle at the supercharger in Celebration, Florida. I'm doing this to make the most efficient use of my time by charging while they're shopping. Then I can spend less time charging later on. So here we are at the supercharger in Celebration, Florida, and it's saying it's going to take me about 45 to 50 minutes to get to 100% state of charge. The maximum charge rate for this supercharger is 150 kilowatt, and as you can see here, I'm getting about 100 to 105 kilowatt out of this supercharger, so not too bad. Here we can see my consumption after I dropped my family off to do the shopping and I traveled to the supercharger. It looks like my average is about 303 watt hours per mile, and I had a huge spike up to what looks like about 900 watt hours or above. Not really sure what that's about. Again, we're going to take a quick look at the consumption on the Tesla Energy screen each time I stop to charge. Okay, so we made it to the supercharger in Yulee, Florida, and this was a long stop because we wanted to have lunch while we were there. We didn't need to charge up to 100% here, but since we were stopping for lunch anyway, we decided to charge all the way up. This is a version 3 supercharger with a max charge rate of 250 kilowatt, and this charger delivers very well. Now in this portion of the video, I've already charged up to 90%, and so it's tapering pretty heavy. It's down to about 35 or 36 kilowatt, but you can see that I've already added 58 kilowatt hours to the battery. And once again here on the consumption screen, we can see that for this portion of the trip, I'm averaging about 292 watt hours per mile. Okay folks, here's a quick look at my trip. We actually plan to stop in Fayetteville, North Carolina for some rest. So here you can see from Yulee, Florida, we were going to stop in Hardeeville, South Carolina, and we would arrive in Hardeeville with 33% state of charge, and we would need to charge there for 10 minutes. And then it's telling us we would need to make another stop in Santee for 30 minutes to charge, and we would arrive in Fayetteville with a 13% state of charge. Now we were actually staying at the Hilton Doubletree in Fayetteville, which has a supercharger on site. But this is a quick look at our trip and where Tesla thinks we would need to stop. Okay folks, here we are in Hardeeville, and here I'm going to take a look at the consumption first. It looks like my average is 271 watt hours per mile. Okay, so we're going to charge for about 25 minutes here in Hardeeville. This is a version 3 supercharger with a maximum charge rate of 250 kilowatt. And you can see here I'm getting just below 160 kilowatt. I also want to note that at this point the Tesla navigation is no longer stopping us in Santee. They've rerouted us to Florence, South Carolina. And here we are at the supercharger in Florence, South Carolina. And as you can see on the screen, we're getting the maximum charge rate for this supercharger, which is 150 kilowatt. This supercharger was very busy when we showed up, and it was later in the evening. The mall there was closed. But there was a lot of activity at this Tesla supercharger, so it had us charging here for 10 minutes. and then continuing our trip, but I had already been charging for a while, and as you can see, the screen shows that I already added 13 kilowatt hours to the battery at this point. This would be the last supercharger stop on our way to the hotel in Fayetteville. And as we can see here on the consumption screen, we're right around 300 watt hours per mile for the previous 30 miles. And here we are at the Fayetteville Supercharger, which is also where we're staying for the night. We got in around 11:30, and shortly after I hooked up to the supercharger and charged it up to 80% before I parked the vehicle. The following morning, I charged it the rest of the way to 100% and then started out. Fayetteville is also a 150 kilowatt supercharger, and as you can see, we were getting about 120 kilowatt. And here's a look at the previous 30 miles consumption when we got to Fayetteville, and as you can see, the average is down to 264 watt hours per mile, and I suspect this is due to the temperature being a little cooler. It was 82 degrees at the time I recorded this video, and earlier in the day it was up to between 90 and 100 degrees, so quite hot. And here we are on day 2. I didn't record topping off the battery in Fayetteville, but here we are in Petersburg, Virginia at the supercharger, which has a max charge rate of 250 kilowatt, so it's also a V3 charger. And on this day I was getting about 200 kilowatt put into the battery, so not bad at all. This would be the only supercharger stop on the final day of our trip, so I actually charged it up to 100% in Petersburg, mainly because we also ate here, and then we had to stop to meet the in-laws as well, so we were already stopping for a longer period of time, so charging it to 100% and not having to stop again later on was the most efficient thing to do in this case. And then once again, a quick look at our consumption for the previous 30 miles. Okay folks, so here we are back in Maryland, and we made it back with 30% state of charge, which is pretty good. I originally thought I was going to have to stop in Stafford, Virginia to charge again, but the extra charge in Petersburg allowed us to drive all the way through to our final destination and still have 30% remaining charge. As you can see, the average for the previous 30 miles was really low at only 212 watt hours per mile. I think this was mainly due to a lot of in-town driving on the last 30 to 40 miles of the trip. Okay folks, so that's it for the footage that I shot during the road trip. Let's go ahead and take a look at my TeslaMate. My TeslaMate is not only going to have all the details for the trip back, but it's also going to have all the information for the trip down as well, so you can compare them both. Okay folks, those of you that appreciate data and statistics are going to love this part of the video. Now I'm not going to go over every single statistic. I'm just going to give an overview. Some of these locations are not totally correct. For example, some of the trips were broken into 2 parts when they weren't really broken into 2 parts. Some of that may be because we hit traffic. On the way down, our first stop was at the supercharger in Chester. Then we stopped in Smithfield at the supercharger there. Then at the Florence supercharger and the Hardeeville supercharger. We stayed at the hotel in Savannah. Then the following day we went to the supercharger in Yulee, Florida, and then we reached our destination. As far as the way back, I went through that in the previous parts of this video, so I'm not going to go over that again. But here we can see all the pertinent statistics here. We can see the mileage, how many miles it was for each trip, the starting state of charge, the ending state of charge, the temperature, the ambient temperature, the average speed, the maximum power, the number of kilowatt hours consumed, our consumption in watt hours per mile, and then our efficiency. And I can scroll up here. This was the rest of our trip. So you can pause here again if you want to see the statistics for this part of the trip, the 31st and the 1st. But TeslaMate really is a great app. I highly recommend it because you can really dig in to all the information about your trips and how your efficiency is doing and how your driving is. And it really will help you get the most out of your Tesla. Folks, there's no longer a question of if there are chargers available. The only question people are asking now is how long does it take to charge up an EV on a road trip? Tesla is way ahead with their vehicles and their charging network. Charging took little more time than using a gas vehicle during this trip, really. We would have had to stop for food anyway, so in total I estimate for this particular trip it took us an extra 40 minutes for charging versus using a gas vehicle. Folks, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps other YouTubers find quality content and we really appreciate it. Click on subscribe and then click the bell to get notified whenever new content is added. As always, comments, questions, and suggestions are welcome below, and we thank you very much for watching.